well, moving right along, if you would take out this dirty, awful piece of paper, the white one, I'm going to go through this with you. My wife added that little at the top, Apologetics 101. That's cute. Midterm, she said, is this a final exam? I said, no, we're just getting started. It's going to be a while. So we're 7 months into this, and we scratched the surface for sure, but we've got some other stuff to get into. And at any time we can divert and deal with some other things related or maybe even not to some extent. This sometimes brings up other questions, and I like to strike when the iron's hot. So, and at the bottom you got the little keep calm and answer the questions. So don't put your name on it. I'm not interested in who knows what. This is a way for me, number one, to do something a little bit different. Don't you like to kind of change things up a little bit sometimes? And number two, this is a way for me to review again, and I think we've reviewed 3 times so far. And it's a way for me to see where you folks are. So I can know, do we go back and address something? Am I missing them completely on certain things? And I know this is different than most things you'll ever study. But my goodness, how often this comes into play. I was doing an estimate for due today. He lives right near another guy who we maintain their property, and he asked me if I could, and we had lost an account, so I was going to try to replace one. And I said, we can do it. And he comes out, and come to find out, he's an assistant pastor at another church, big church. And he's a retired police officer. But then his neighbor walks across and sees us discussing the lawn, and he and I are in this spiritual conversation about biblical things, right? This guy walks up and immediately let us know, I'm a skeptic and I've got questions for both of you. Kind of not offensively, but kind of like, now what? And I've got, hey, here's my number. I'd love to talk to you. And I really would love to talk to you. He's like, well, I'm scientifically minded now. And I said, well, I'm not, but that's okay. I said, I got people. I know people. And he said, I got a lot of hard questions about this creation stuff. As if it's new. And I said, look, creation stuff is older than evolutionary stuff. And then he kind of hemmed around, and I said, let me ask you something before I got to go, but, we'll talk. I'd love to. I said, who do you think has more evidence, creationist or evolutionist? And he said, obviously evolutionists. And I said, so creationists don't have access to fossil records? Well, yeah, I guess so. Are we limited in what science we can access? Well, no. And then he came back and said, we both have the same amount of evidence, don't we? And I said, yes, we do. I said, we look at it differently. I look at it from there is a God. You look at it from, there is not a God. I said, we all got the same amount of evidence, dude. You don't have anything that I don't have that I can look at, So anyway, and I have so far to go, and we all do, but it's nice to feel a little bit of assurance that if this guy asks me an intelligent question about creation, I can have or find the answer, because there are answers, And that's nice, as opposed to claiming up and going, oh gosh, here's a smart guy and he's going to ask me something about the Bible, All right, so question number 1, in your own words, does everybody have a pen? I didn't think about that. Okay, if you don't find, like it was in school, find a girl next to you, and if you needed a pen or a piece of gum or candy or mint, you found a girl next to you and you got one, right? School supplies. Question number 1, in your own words, define apologetics. Can we do that? It's a Greek word, apologia. Take the word apologize from.
A method of breaking barriers to other people's faith and the things that are relevant.
Yes, that's what it accomplishes. Yeah, y'all don't have to give them to me. I'll let you write them. Yes. And if you'll turn these in, I can read them and know where we are. You know what I mean? All right. So, and we'll go through them, and we'll just go through each question. And when you got your answer, just look up and give me a nod, and then we'll move on. And then if you don't even understand one of these questions, like I often did not in school, it's hard to answer a question if you don't understand it. So in your own words, define apologetics, whatever it means to you, even if, however you want to word it. It doesn't have to be exactly what we said. And then why do we need apologetics? It's kind of two-in-one question. I'm not going to give you Greg's answer on that one. Why do we need apologetics? Christian apologetics specifically. By the way, every worldview has apologetics. Muslims have paid apologists. How would you like to get on stage with one of those guys? That'd be kind of scary. Okay, so define apologetics in your own words. Why do we need apologetics in your own words? You know, it doesn't have to be. Are we good? Ready for number 3? These will get slower. Some of these are kind of long. In our studies, we came across the verse, love God with all of your heart. What does the word heart mean to you? This was one of our diversions early on that we took. We were studying something else. Apologetically, we came across that. The word looked different. You ever study something in the Bible and the word just pops out differently? It just looks different. And you know that the Lord is trying to slow you down to look at a word. So we studied that word, and I know all of you haven't been here for all of this. I understand that. So, just answer what you remember, what you can. But to give you some hints, heart, it doesn't mean, when the Bible says love God with your heart, obviously, he's not talking about the organ that pumps blood. So it's metaphorical, and it means more than I thought it did early on. All right, so number 4, we studied the concept of absolute truth, which is what we're dealing with today. How would you explain to someone that truth is not relative, or it does not change based on a culture or an individual? Folks, this is huge for apologetics. This is a really big question. And I know the guy I talked to today, I know one of his arguments is that cultures define what truth is. I know that's going to be one of his arguments. It's a very intelligent sounding argument, but it's very fallacious. It has flaws, a lot of them, a huge one. Ask Nazi Germany what they were. So how would you tell one of your neighbors that truth is not based on a culture or an individual? Because remember, do y'all remember this? Cultural relativism led to individual relativism. So when you break it down and say, well, the American culture, in our culture, we just think a man should marry a woman, and not 2 women, and not a guy, and we say, well, okay, that works for our culture, but is it wrong in other cultures? And if it is, why? And even if it isn't, do we have evidence that God designed us, male and female, to marry each other? And is that relative to, different cities in America? Okay, so number 5, this is kind of a big one. We also studied 4 arguments for the existence of God. You're probably still working on number 4.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can flip it over on the back. That's not nearly enough room. Not nearly. Just in a few sentences, over brunch or lunch, coffee. How would you, 4 or 5 sentences, whatever, 2, 3, 5, 10. How would you explain to someone that truth is not relative? What example would you use? I'm giving you a hint, but I'm going to use Nazi Germany. That's what I'm going to use. Because Hitler convinced the German people that his idea of a master race at the cost of all other races was okay. That was cultural relativism. And every other culture, America and other major world powers looked at him and said, that's wrong. You can't kill people because you don't like their hair color. Hitler didn't think it was wrong. A lot of German folks didn't think it was wrong. A lot of them did, actually, but, So how would you tell them? If somebody tells you, no, don't preach right and wrong to me, that's based on the culture. How would you tell them it is not? You can't quote them a verse only, because they don't even care about the Bible. You can't say John 3:16 or whatever. You can't do that. You got to give them logical, common. If it's truth, it is in the Bible somewhere. But you got to give them some other practical examples. Okay. We ready? Okay, then number 5, we also studied 4 arguments for the existence of God. And I'm just asking that you choose one of the 4, one that you're most comfortable with or know the best, and explain it in your own words. You got the first one we studied, Anselm. Remember he said the fool has said in his heart there is no God, and then he backed up and said, how can the fool argue against something like a God if God himself did not put the concept of God in our brain? How did we conceive of God and then argue against it? That's not my favorite of the four arguments. You got the cosmos argument. Let me break that down real quick. We have a cosmos, so it must have a God, basically. We have stuff, we have matter. Where did it come from? That's that one. And then the fine-tuning takes the cosmos and says, not only do we have a bunch of matter, it is highly designed for life, and it's intelligent. Does that make sense? Okay. That's the fine-tuning argument. So not only do you have a pile of lumber that you have to explain, you now have a pile of lumber that has been turned into a building that's fine-tuned. Even if you had a pile of lumber sitting on an empty lot, like we do in neighborhoods we're working all the time, you drive by and say, well, somebody made that lumber, it came from something else, and somebody delivered it here. It's a lot of lumber that got brought by a truck or something. But then you got a building that pops up in 6 months, and you say, wow, that was pretty cool. That took architecture, that took blueprints, builders, owners. Then you got the moral argument, which is my personal favorite. If there is no, what we're saying with these arguments, if there is no God, how do you explain morality? Y'all remember that one? Why would you even know what right and wrong were without God? And why would you care? This goes kind of back to relativism and absolute truth. Why, in most, if not all cultures ever studied, why is it wrong to murder somebody and take what they have? Why does everybody look at that as wrong? Survival of the fittest, that's right, that's evolution, that's where it leads. So the moral argument says, and this was the answer to evil. Somebody comes up and says, well, if you break down all other logical barriers to God, then they will say, well, yeah, I hear you, but if there's a God, why is there so much evil? And your answer is, if there's no God, how do you know what evil is, and why do you prefer the good? So I like the moral argument a lot. It's very logical, it's very easy. You're not saying that an atheist can't be good. You're saying, why would an atheist be good if there's no God? We're not saying that atheists are immoral people and that they're all evil. They're not. I have a customer that's an atheist. I mean, he told me, I got into this conversation once and he won't talk about it, so he said, I'm not real big on faith right now. I said, oh, okay. He says, as a matter of fact, I don't even know that there's a God, really. He won't talk about it, so I didn't. But this would have been my first argument, probably. Moral argument. So just put that in your own words. I mean, in your own words, how would you explain this to a friend you care about when you're trying to convince them that God exists? Well, yeah, yes. I mean, what I mean is not all atheists live unethical, immoral lives. They can live good lives, pay their bills, take care of their neighbor, be kind. They're still evil in the sense that they're rejecting God. That's what Greg's saying. What I mean is, if you say this to an atheist, they're going to be offended and say, you're telling me I can't be nice? And I said, no. You might be very nice. I'm saying, without God, if I go by your argument, there really is no God. You don't have to be nice. Who's going to hold you accountable? And then they're going to bring up the civil law, and they're going to say, well, like I said Sunday, can you tell me one law that is not based out of the Ten Commandments? This really starts coming together the longer you study it, and it's a puzzle, but when you start seeing it fit together, it's really cool. All right, we good on that one? That's a tough one. No rush. It's only 7:38. We're good. And the next few are pretty quick. Well, one of them isn't. Number 5's a big one. It might take a little while. Pick your favorite argument and just put it in your own words. You could use a building or a yard or whatever it is you do for a living. Try to relate it to what you do for a living. If you're a computer programmer, that's a great one. I don't know, does anybody do that? Like computer stuff, IT? Sean, do you do?
Some, but that's not my primary.
Not really? I mean, what a great debate to sit there and talk with an atheist as you're fooling with a computer and say, wouldn't you say that human anatomy is as complicated or more complicated than a computer? and you tell me all this is accidental, that arranged itself randomly. But this computer took years of thought before it ever became really a real concept, I guess you could say. Anyway, in computer state design. That's where I'm going with that. Are we good? No rush. We are? Okay. Number 6 is easy. True or false, Christianity is the only worldview that relies on an uncaused first cause to explain creation. No matter what your worldview is, you have to explain creation. If you're an atheist, you don't get to bypass this huge problem of creation. So if you're dealing with an atheist and they go, I don't care about creation. Well, no, dude, you have to care about creation. How do you explain creation? Well, it's accidental. Okay, fine. Well, when did the accident start? So, is that true or false? Christianity is the only one with a worldview that relies on an uncaused first cause to explain creation. Y'all understand that question? It's kind of complicated. An uncaused first cause, ours is God. Nobody created him. He's an uncaused first cause that created everything else. So I've literally had somebody make fun of the idea of God to me because we're saying nobody created him. So what's the antithesis? What's the opposite argument of that? There is, but even if you reject the idea of God, can you get around the idea that somewhere there was an uncaused first cause? That's an uncaused first cause. Right. Right. So, true or false, is Christianity the only worldview that relies on an uncaused first cause to explain creation? We rely on God. He's an uncaused first cause. What does an evolutionist rely on to explain creation? What? Huh? No, what's it called? What's it called? What do they call it? The Big Bang. Is that an uncaused first cause in their argument? Absolutely. So what they're saying is, there's no way there can be a God that wasn't created. But everything you see didn't have a creator, and it started with the Big Bang, which is an uncaused first cause. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Does that make sense? So no matter what worldview it is, everybody relies.
But they're just starting, I mean, you can push them back further than that, because if they're starting with a piece of something
Right.
that exploded.
Energy and stuff.
But there was a mass of something that.
Right.
They can't go past where did that come from.
Because it ends up with gases and
Well, where did
energy.
it come from?
Right.
I'm just saying, they can argue that all day. They have, there's a cause, something that created something.
It did, but in their argument, nothing did. But they're still relying on an uncaused first cause. Even if it's the Big Bang, it's in their argument, it's uncaused. And we say, well, ours is uncaused too, but it had intelligence.
So the Big Bang is their God, basically.
It is. It is their uncaused first cause. Yeah, absolutely. That's why a lot of scientists, even though they won't latch on to Christianity, they're going towards, I can't even think of it now. It's a combination of creation and evolution.
I think the Catholic Church is teaching
Yeah, basically God started it and then he backed off and let it just kind of,
that. They have his hand in it.
theistic evolution. Yeah. Because scientifically, you can't look at, like the teen said one time, talking about this, and I said, no. As if a bunch of stuff started exploding. And I said, wait a minute, no. Before Big Bang, you had nothing. There wasn't anything to explode together. Can you imagine nothingness? It's really hard to imagine. I can't hardly do it. Nothing. There's not like dirt. There's nothing. There's no gases. There's no chemicals. There's no matter. So, and a couple of them are like, oh, never thought about that. Didn't think back that far. All right, so number 5, I think we're good, right? Number 6, true or false. Is that true or false?
It's a false.
That's absolutely false. I don't care who you're talking to, their worldview somewhere has an uncaused first cause. They have to trace back creation to nothing. We trace it back to God who stepped out on nothing and created everything with intelligence. They go back to an accidental chemical, gas, matter. Well, where did that come from? And now they're saying, remember that picture I had? They're now saying, what's a multiverse? Another universe is birthing out other universes. And you're like, well, really, that's the best you can do? Because now you got to explain a more complicated, bigger multiverse. that's popping out universes like ours. And then he gave motivation. Why would it? Why, they used the word had. It had to. It needed. Why did the world need or have to be here? It doesn't. They can't use those words. There's no motivation. True or false? Everyone has a worldview. What is a worldview? Yeah, just reverse the word. It's how you view the world. That's all it is. Does everybody have one? Absolutely. Don't get in a debate with somebody. They'll make you think that they really don't care. They're not philosophically minded. It doesn't matter what anything. Not true. They lay their head down at night just like you do and say, "Why am I here?" They do. Unless they reject that idea long enough, and God turns them over and seals their conscience, and then they really actually start believing there is no God, and then they're capable of. There's no restraint left on them. Your serial killers. I watched another interview the other night. Dude was, empty. His eyes were empty. And I don't know what happened to him or how long it took, but he really killed and there's no remorse. There's nothing. So you can't, we were debating this, and she said, anybody can do that. Anybody can be serial. No. That's a process. The average person can't go kill 10 people and not have remorse. Takes a seared conscience, I would say. Number 8, how would you define evil? Give you some hints. Is it an action? Is it a created entity that God created? Did the devil create it? Or is it an action? Is it the byproduct of something else? Is it the rejection of something else? What is evil? In your own words. How would you define it? I don't mean like, say, Hitler. He was evil. I mean evil. How would you define evil? Where he came from, kind of How would you define evil? I would not have, before our last few weeks, I know some of y'all were here for it all over, maybe you didn't have the evil part. That was, for me, because a lot of this I've studied before, evil had not like this. That's been the most beneficial part of the study for me, is evil and probably digging back into the moral argument for God deeper. Evil is it's really helpful. Really been a big help. How would you define evil? Augustine said it's like darkness and light. Evil's the absence of light. I guess that's...
Rejection of God.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. What did I say? Yeah. Evil's the... Yeah. Evil the absence of light. But there again, put it in your own words as far as maybe what you do for a living, or I don't know. Yep. What do you have to do to have cold? You just don't have any heat. The number 9, the last one. Why do you think God allowed evil? Now, we had said that God is not the author of evil. Then we read in the book of Acts, even though he is not the author of evil and did not create it, it's a created thing, it's an action. Evil's an action. We see in the book of Acts how God ordained Christ and how Christ would die. Remember that? I read it all. There's a few verses in Acts chapter, 6 maybe. And it's a prayer, and Peter or John, one of them were praying. I think it's Peter. And he basically says, the Gentile, the Jew, Pontius Pilate, and what's his name? Did you not ordain all of this from before time? From before. I'm messing the verse up. So we see God ordaining the very thing that he hates, which is really strange. He's ordaining the way that Christ would die. Men did it, and Christ warned them. Evil must come, but basically God helped the one and who it comes through. So why do you think God allowed evil? Did he create it? It's not even created. I can't give you an answer there. Evil is the absence of good. We see Lucifer, remember, the first example of evil we had was Lucifer rejecting God. The action wasn't evil in that he went and killed somebody. His first evil action was simply rejecting God. That was evil. And then evil follows. And then you've got Adam and Eve in the garden, tempted by Satan, and what is their first evil action? It wasn't eating the fruit. They rejected what God said, and then they ate, right? So the first evil action was here, which goes back to the New Testament. Jesus said, all of you think that murder is the physical action of killing somebody, and I say it's in the heart. It happens in the heart first, and it happens with the body. So why do you think God allowed evil? That's a tough one. We can't say that God responded to man and said, oh my goodness, they've done wrong, what am I going to do? That's how I was, not by my parents, that's the kind of messages I used to hear as a teenager, and it made God really small and not very powerful. Almost like God was wringing his hands and going, oh goodness, what have they done? What am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? It's not the way it worked.
Like, look what happened.
Yeah. You know, we've got to clean up
Look what
this.
they did.
Right. I mean, God knew it. You know, somebody walks up and says, you think God? Well, yeah, God knew. What do you mean did God know? Yes, God knew. He allowed it, knowing how much death and misery it would cause. He allowed it. He could have stopped it. You know, and we said he could have created other worlds, one where we only choose good. Remember that? That's the problem with that world. You're a robot. You can only choose good. You can only love him.
But we did, and I suppose the angels have a choice because they're rebelled, but they look at us, like you said, something in one for the mystery of salvation.
Yeah.
And so,
They don't understand it.
and I don't understand it either. I mean, I've got my notes where we studied that, but there was not an answer to that question specifically. I was not allowed, except for
Well,
choice and the love that he could show through redemption, which all
Right.
of it's going to end up giving him glory.
right. Well, what we ended up with last week, we wrapped up evil and said that if you're going to create man and you're going to give him a will to either love you or not, even though God has to help with that too, but it's another story. If you're going to create man and give him a will, a volition, then the byproduct is potentially evil, right? Because it's just rejecting of good. So then the question became last week, then why did God, the question was not why did God allow evil, the question really becomes why did God create man? Remember that? And we answered that with two different passages. Romans chapter 9, remember that one? What if God were willing to put up with the evildoers so that he could then in turn love the good, the ones that accept him? And the other one was out of Ephesians that said that Christ has saved you so that he can love you for all of eternity. And if you put those two together, you get an answer as to why God created man. And why then he was willing to put up with the evil and the problems we would cause is, and I called it last week, I call it collateral damage. God was willing to deal with collateral damage in order to get what he wanted, which was people who would love him of their own volition to some extent. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Would you say all of our actions are either evil or not evil?
I would say every action is either good or evil.
I would tend to think just that evil is the really bad, extreme bad
Yeah.
stuff. Is, you know. So tomorrow when I'm driving to work and I'm trying to tell the guy next to me how to drive, that's going to be evil.
Well,
If it's not of God, it is.
and I mean, I don't think this is all opinion, but some of it is opinion gets in there, and I don't mind to dominate the conversation. But I'm trying to understand what evil was. And biblically speaking, evil was, it wasn't murder or rape. That is, evil was the rejection of good. So when you get into Isaiah, and I just had this conversation with a very good friend of mine that's a missionary, going back to India and all that good stuff, and he disagreed with me that a non-believer can do good things. I said, yes, on the surface, a non-believer can be kind to his neighbor and do nice things for his neighbor. And God will certainly prefer that over him killing his neighbor. But why in Isaiah does he say even your good works are as filthy rags if you're not saved, if you're not a believer in God? I always read that verse until we studied this. I've always read that verse, and I've always thought in the back of my mind, God, that's a little bit harsh. I don't think that's very fair or nice. But it isn't. That's a wrong way to think, because when you define evil from the Bible, and you realize that evil isn't just murder and rape, evil is the rejection of what is good, right? Evil is me saying, I know what the Word of God says, but instead of following God and giving my life to what He wants me to do, I'm going to go get a job and raise a family. Is that evil? If it's rejecting what God told me to do, it's evil. But what we're getting into, what I think what you're getting into, is degrees of evil. You know, would I rather my son reject God's will for his life in some senses than murder? Of course I would. But are they both evil? You know, I would say every action is. It is. It's either every. I mean, what is sin? Well, what's y'all's definition of sin? No, not degrees of sin, because we can all say murder and rape and stealing is sin.
Something that's outside of God's will.
Exactly.
But don't you think we can have some actions that are neutral?
No.
Pretend I'm at the grocery store and I'm picking what kind of yogurt I want. Do you think God cares?
That's not a moral issue.
That's what kids
It
were
could
doing.
be.
That's
Did you
what
talk
I
to your
think.
wife?
I think that's what he's meaning.
He did. He said, drive it tomorrow. The guy next to me, I'm trying to tell him to drive. Every little action, like, saying, drive.
Well, this could lead to legalism, and you don't want it to.
I'm hesitant to tell my grandson that
You were talking
don't
about
yell at your nanny because it's evil. I'm gonna think afraid that'll warp you.
I wouldn't
At
call
some
it evil.
point,
Just tell him.
It's not good.
maybe selfish, which
Not that he ever has.
Okay, I see where we're going. No, picking out yogurt is not evil. That's a
it is.
non-moral
That's- I mean,
issue.
Okay.
I'm talking about moral issues.
Okay, but there's neutral
Yeah.
decisions in our lives.
Well, yeah.
okay, that's where we got confused.
Yeah.
because Kent was talking about his.
Is it non-fat or is it
It's
The
right.
good for your body.
Is it Greek or is it regular?
yeah? My wife tries. She gets the Greek non-fat, and then there's no vanilla. There's no flavor. It's like legit straight yogurt. You read that stuff? That's bad stuff.
It's
Pretty good
like
for
It
the
has vanilla.
Pretty good. It is evil.
Sprinkle some bacon in it. We gotta hurry. Okay. All right. So I get your question. I mean, there's non-moral issues that aren't. You're going down the road. You're taking a drive with your wife just to waste time and hang out with her, like a Sunday drive. Do we go left or do we go right? There's no moral implication. It doesn't matter. We don't want to turn that into evil versus not evil.
Yeah.
If your wife tells you to take a left, can you take a right and not be evil? Yes, you can.
According to her, you do.
Because she's not God. But, I mean, not quite.
I suppose if you feel the Holy Spirit speaking to you about something,
Yeah.
you know you need to do.
But there is a revealed will of God, and teenagers all get caught up, I don't know what the will of God is. Well, do you read the, no, read the Bible. Okay, you don't even know what we all are supposed to do. Why don't we work on that, and then we'll get on the specifics of specifically where does God want you to go to college. I mean, it's not in the Bible. You know. Yeah. So sin is anything contrary to the nature and character of God. That's how most theologians would classify sin. Anything, and this is moral, this isn't picking out yogurt, this is moral. Anything contrary to the nature of God. I heard R.C. Sproul say today that perhaps one of the worst sins in his mind, at least to a lot of others, is envy. And I thought about it, you know what, if you don't envy, you won't murder, you won't steal, you won't become violent, you won't have any motive to go get something that isn't yours. I never thought about it like that, but morally speaking, everything is either good or evil, I would say. I do.
Bad or evil.
Sir?
You mean bad or good or evil?
Yes.
Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
Yeah, good or evil, or bad or good. I would, but I mean, you don't want to get it legalistic and, where you're saying, like yelling at somebody in traffic, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, you know, because there's that gray area. Where's there a moral dimension to what you're doing when there's not
Yeah.
a moral
Well, as
dimension?
long as you say God bless his soul, then that's good.
I mean, dealing with traffic, though, a lot of people cannot drive. I mean, they can really can't.
It's a hard.
Would,
But if Jesus is sitting right beside us, which he really is,
would Jesus tell them, though, how to, like, get in your, speed it up?
it's all
Probably
about
not.
the attitude, probably
Probably not.
not. So that,
Well,
that
you
can
know,
go into that whole
That brings up,
Christ-like thing.
that brings up
Say
something my
the
son
law
brought up, like,
is
what's the big deal with cuss words? I don't know if he's wanting to say cuss word or two, but I got to think about cuss words, not the bad, just the common John language, our favorites.
Who said they were bad words? That's what, I mean, that's what I always
That's all
think.
culture.
Yeah, my wife's like, well, who made them bad? And I said, it isn't the word,
It's the usage
it's
of
the
it.
anger behind the word. So, is necessarily helping someone in traffic evil? If we're angry and we want to like ram them off the road with their bumper like I do sometimes, then there's some evil going on probably, and that's contrary to what God would want me to do. But I don't want to turn everything into, son, don't get on somebody in traffic. That's evil. I would just say, hey, let's keep her calm and not lose her temper. We're careful about that anyway. I don't beat our kids over the head with, that wouldn't make God happy. Like I see, well, that's not cool. I don't want to do that too much. But I do have conversations with my kids about the character of God. And then I let God work on them and say, that's not what I want. You don't want to be the Holy Spirit necessarily. But yeah, I mean, there's, you pick out white bread or wheat bread at the store. Is that evil or, but which one's healthier? And you're supposed to take care of the temple? How many neutral decisions are there?
A few.
There's a few.
That'd make an interesting ad campaign, wouldn't it?
Ad campaign?
Yeah. If you went,
Yeah.
if you went to buy something and they had it, the ad was, you don't buy the other bread, that's evil. Well, they already did that with the milk. We're off on a tangent.
Well, how do y'all feel about the test here? It's 8. We got to roll, but
I
that's a
wish
good
you was
question.
standing around when I was taking biology years ago, talking us through the whole thing. Giving us
I know, right? You're basically giving the
He
answers.
did a test, he's giving us all the answers.
I tried to give you the answer after we went through it, so you went back and we cheated.
No,
But
you gave us the answers.
Yeah, you gave us the answer.
You said, put it in your own words.
Put it in your own
What I'm
words.
saying, put it in your own words.
Well, you can still put it in your own words. You don't have to listen to me.
Get graded on the curve.
Grade on the curve. There's no grade. I won't grade it.
We all get 100.
Everybody gets 100. So if you want to just leave them up here or something when you walk out, and I just want to see where you are. Now at the bottom it says this. Do you have any questions, whether related to apologetics or not, that you would like discussed or answered on Wednesday night? You can jot those down. Y'all see that? Very bottom. Are we good for the night? Everybody good? Okay, let's pray. Let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you again for these folks that desire to study your word and many things related. I pray that you would, as always, give us clarity of thought, Lord. Give us wisdom as we study. Help us to see the scriptures clearly without any even denominational bias at times. And just help us to see it for exactly what it says. I ask you these things in Christ's name. Amen.